What we are going to tackle or evolve into is living in your imagination and placing meanings on things that happen. That's a nice follow-up from what we did yesterday when we talked about fear masquerading as love and all these things that we tell ourselves or convince ourselves or believe is about love, but if we're really honest and look a bit deeper, it's actually at least in part about fear. And that was an interesting exploration for you guys and for everyone, really, for me too. And so today we're going to just go a little bit deeper with that and really look at how much subjectivity and limited lenses we bring to our experience of life and our perceptions. Now, why do we do that? There's often, and I'm sure we all can relate to some experiences where we had a particular, maybe a conflict or an issue come up around something that happened with a friend or within our relationship or at work, and we really perceived certain things to be happening, and it means that person is really, doesn't like me anymore. They're trying to steal my project at work, or they're doing this or they're doing that, and you have a certain idea of what's happening. And when you actually perhaps go and talk to the other person and try to communicate about what's happening, they have a completely different story to tell. They have a completely different perception of what's been happening. And it doesn't mean that they're right or you're wrong, or you're right and they're wrong. Often enough, the truth is somewhere in the middle. But sometimes one person is clearer on what's really happening than the other. It's usually the one that has the less charge about the situation. Whenever you have charge about something and you're triggered, and sometimes the charge is actually an emotional charge, you have a lot of feelings going on about it, but sometimes a trigger can be simply going numb or judging or shutting down or shutting off other people. Being triggered is not always a really explosive experience. Being triggered is basically being into your ego and being identified with your negative ego and what's going on that level. So whenever you are triggered or whenever you have any charge going on, you are not going to be able to see clearly what is going on in a situation because you are not even connected into your clear self. You're completely identified with your negative ego and any issues that have been triggered through the events that have been happening. And whenever you are identified with your negative ego, you perceive everything through the lens of the negative ego. And let's remember that the negative ego is the sum total of your fear-based patterning. So whenever you are identified with your ego, you see everything through the lens of your fear-based patterns. That's basically what it means, right? You are triggered into your ego whenever you are not aligned, centered, and connected into your heart and identified with this energy and presence that you are as a spiritual being in your heart. So whenever you're not holding that space of clarity and love and connection and alignment and centering, you are identified with your ego. And so you can see how, the vast majority of people spend a lot of time being an ego. And you can see how it's very difficult for people to have a really clear perception of what's actually happening in life, in the world, when they are not being plugged into their clear self, right? What tends to happen when we are identified with ego is that we go into all our fear-based patterns, and one big part of that is avoidance and denial. The negative ego is heavily invested in avoiding and denying. Avoiding and denying anything that's going to be uncomfortable, painful, challenging, that's going to be about the unknown, anything that you're scared of, anything that makes you feel not so good about yourself, anything that may threaten your attachments, anything that you feel is too overwhelming to deal with, everything you hate, everything you judge. The negative ego is heavily invested in avoiding and denying all of these things. And so it's very hard to see what's really going on in the world when you have a list this long of things that you do not want to see, you do not want to know, you do not want to feel, you do not want to hear, you do not want to talk about. all these no-go zones, all these things that you do not want to face, to feel, to embrace, to acknowledge. And that's what the negative ego does a lot of the times, because it's invested in fear, it's invested in staying small, it's invested in the comfort zone, it's invested in saying no to love and saying yes to fear. And when you are coming from this place, your whole reality is going to be distorted, because the negative ego is going to filter what is happening, your perception of that, through these lenses of making sure that you're staying in your comfort zone, you stay in fear, you stay small, you avoid anything that's going to stretch or mean discomfort or pain or anything like that. However, sometimes life pushes us in a way that certain things become hard to avoid and deny anymore. It can be that, the issues in your relationship that you've been pretending are not there for the last 10 years certainly surface when the other person, breaks up, or you start to really just suddenly wake up and go, oh my God, I can't take this anymore. There's just too much going on. It can be what's happening with your job. There's a lot of things you've been kind of avoiding and denying in your job. Maybe it wasn't fulfilling for you, or maybe there's been a lot of things going on around you that has been very unethical or even very maybe criminal, and you've just avoided and denied and pretend you didn't see it. But maybe one day it starts to affect you, or it starts to affect someone you care about, and then you feel that you can't avoid and deny that anymore. Or sometimes it's just simply life throwing things in your face that just confront you with certain aspects of yourself, your behavior, your life, your relationships, your activity, which has been about fear. And in order for you to grow, or in order for you to move forward with certain things in your life, in order for you to be successful, in order for you to be more abundant, you're going to have to change those things. Because see, it's very hard to achieve any kind of growth, success, abundance, love, genuine fulfillment in life if you do everything from a place of fear. And that's, why that experience of suffering, because we want love. Well, we say we want love anyway. We say we want to grow. We say we want success. But then when we are confronted with the opportunities to be loved and love, or be successful, truly successful, or really step into something that's going to bring much fulfillment to us, the negative ego comes in, and we have to fight that. And it becomes uncomfortable, and it becomes painful. But at the same time, if we don't choose the opportunities to step up, to be successful, to be fulfilled, then something in us is going to be suffering. And that's usually the real us, the being that we are, that spiritual being that yearns for growth, that yearns for love, that yearns for light, that yearns for success. And so either way, as long as you're fighting the process, it's going to be a painful experience, because if you choose the fear, the spirit within is going to languish. It's going to really suffer. And there's something within you that's going to feel so empty and unfulfilled. And, that can lead to all sorts of experiences. I know for me that in the periods of my life where I was really misguided and choosing fear more than love, I was really depressed. But at the same time, when you choose to step up and open up to the opportunity to follow your heart, to step out of the comfort zone, then what tends to happen is that the ego fights and kicks and screams. And that's the challenging part of the process. And that's where we can experience certain pain and certain difficulty in choosing the new, because all the sum total of the fear-based choices that we have made in the past have amounted to this whole part of us, which is in the negative ego, that's invested in fear. If you spend 20 years choosing fear, and all of a sudden you wake up and you start to go, okay, I'm going to step up now and I'm going to choose love, there's all of this energy for 20 years that you've been putting into choosing fear and saying, I want fear more than I want love. And that negative ego is invested in that. And there's a lot of energy that's gone into that. And a lot of energy that's gone into avoiding and denying the things that threatened that comfort zone of fear. And so when you start to make those changes and actually choose love over fear, it's a battle. It's a battle, because you've really put all that energy into choosing fear. Now you're just starting to put energy into not chewing love. You can, but choosing works much better. And it's a bit like pushing a car that's broken down. You know, when you first start pushing it, you have to push really hard to get it going. And then as it starts building momentum, it starts going with more ease. And then you can keep pushing, but it starts to really build some speed. And it's a bit the same. It's an effort and it's hard. Now, imagining reality and places meaning on things, we have made all these choices of fear for a long time. Choices that were going to make sure that we didn't see what we didn't want to see. We didn't feel what we did not want to feel. We didn't acknowledge anything that threatened that comfort zone of fear. And a lot of what we do when we go through this process is abdicate our power. So instead of being self-determining and sovereign as a spiritual being that lives in this human body, and we ourselves as this spiritual being know who we are and we make choices out of that, we start to go, oh, it's too hard, it's too much, it's too scary, it's too painful, I don't want to know this, I don't want to feel this. Here, ego, negative ego, you take care of this because I don't want to know about it, I don't want to take responsibility for this, I don't want to face this, you do it for me. And we keep doing this time after time after time, and often for lifetimes, choice after choice after choice. And what we start to do is bury the true self and the spirit self under all these layers of untruth, of illusions, of avoidance and denial and fear. Every time we choose fear, we add a layer that entombs the spirit self. And when we start to choose love again, we start to fan that flame again. We start to reawaken that spirit self within. And the problem, is in any given life, if you do the choosing of love enough and you bury yourself enough and you crush enough that spirit within, you can actually break the spirit within you. And sometimes it can take lifetimes and lifetimes to recover from that. You can actually extinguish that flame within you if you're not careful. And so we go through this process of burying all these things and burying the spirit self because we keep choosing choosing fear over love, and we keep adding layers until we've lost sight of who we really are. And we keep abdicating responsibility, us as the indwelling entity, keep abdicating responsibility and give that power over to the negative ego to run like an automatron, and to run these patterns and process so we don't have to make choices, so we don't have to go anywhere where it's uncomfortable, we don't have to feel things that hurt. And in the end, that's how we end up just being run by patterns and being run by beliefs. We install those beliefs. We decide that, okay, I've had this relationship where this person really hurt me and betrayed me, and I don't want to have a go anymore at relationship. Love hurts too much. It's too dangerous. You never know when someone else is going to betray you. So I'm just going to decide that love is too dangerous, that you can't trust people, and I'm going to just avoid any feeling around that, and I'm not going to take responsibility for any of that anymore. I just want things to just be done for me, be done for myself. And then you spend the rest of your life, no matter what you tell yourself about how much you want love and how much you want to be happy, you keep spending the rest of your life expecting betrayal, expecting to be hurt in love and hurt in relationship, not trusting love, not trusting relationships. And this is the pattern that's running because you've decided this is how reality is, this is how I'm going to see everything, and this is the pattern that I'm going to run. And then you're not actively making a choice to do anything different about it. You're just defined by what happened in the past. Something happened, you decided to give that a particular meaning, to define reality by that, to make a rule out of the exception. Something happens once or twice, even a few times, and then you decide that it's always going to be about betrayal, always going to be about hurt. And then you keep experiencing that time and time again because that's what you believe, that's what you expect, and you have all this automatic pattern running around it because the negative ego, you've told it, protect me from being hurt ever again in relationships because relationships will betray you and they will hurt you. And you do that over and over again. And it's automatic. And unless one day you wake up and decide, hold on, I'm going to question this. I'm going to question what I'm believing here, what I'm expecting. Then you're never going to change that because it's running like an automatic program. And what happens is if you meet actually someone in a relationship that does really love you, that has no interest in betraying you, or hurting you. They're actually a really good person, a really decent person. They really love you. But that completely conflicts with your perception of reality. That completely conflicts with that belief that it's all about betrayal and hurt. So what happens is either you won't even recognize that that person really loves you and really wants to take care of you, so you'll just reject them because that just threatens your reality, it threatens your beliefs. Or you get together with them, but then you'll run all these sabotage patterns in order to make them betray you and make them hurt you. You'll push them away, you'll push them into stuff, you'll be bitchy, you'll be nasty, you'll carry on in ways that are going to create that self-fulfilling prophecy that will confirm your reality. And I've seen that happen times and times again, and I've done it. And I'm sure if you look, you can look at stuff that you keep manifesting over and over again, either because that's what you attract to yourself, because that's what agrees with your beliefs and your perception of reality and your expectations, or it is, if it doesn't, you'll mold it and shape it and respond to it in a way that's going to make it agree with your reality. Does that make sense so far? And a big element in that is the monkey mind, the conscious mind. The problem with placing meaning on things, like I used the example of that one relationship where that person betrayed you and hurt you. Then in that moment, you could have just felt the feelings and chosen to just look at that person and go, well, obviously, something going on with them. Maybe I contributed to that in the relationship. Let's review what I did so I can do it better in the next relationship, and just go through the process of forgiving or accepting what happened, letting that person go and learning to do it better for the part that you played in that, because love is a two-way street. There's not just one person who does everything. It's always a co-creation. So that's one thing you could have done, but instead, in this example, you chose to make it mean love hurts, love's too dangerous because it leads to betrayal. And that's a meaning that you have decided to place on this experience. And this experience doesn't have to mean that. And it probably was not, well, it isn't that, because we know that love actually doesn't hurt. What hurts is people's egos and selfishness and the fear and rejection and all these things. And that's not about love. But you chose to interpret what happened to you through the lenses of fear and to give it particular meaning. And then you spend the rest of your life placing the same meaning on anything that looks remotely the same. And the big part of you that does that is the monkey mind. You have those beliefs, you have those lenses, and when life happens to you, instead of being really present and greeting anew the experience that meets you in every moment, you take the experience as it is, without expectations, without preconceptions, without lenses or limited perceptions. You just take it as it is. But you can't do that when you're invested in protecting yourself, staying in fear, staying small, proving that your reality that you created is right and true, and that's the best way to do it. So what we tend to do is come from the mind rather than from the heart. Because the heart, really that heart's knowing, that heart's spirit deep within, is not invested in seeing things in any other way than how they really are. And when you're really present and really centered, and you're coming from this place of feeling your way through life, experiencing the real, you don't get those lenses. You don't get these games with reality. You don't place meaning on things. What usually you do when you start placing meaning on things is engage the monkey mind. You start to think about things. You ask your mind what it thinks this means, or that means, or what you have to make of that, or what box you put that in. And really, if you look at the things in your life where you get triggered and it starts to bring up old patterns and old hurts from other instances that, to some reason, for some reason, are like an echo of that for you, it's because you started to think about it. You started to engage the mind. You started to ramble to yourself, talk to yourself. And when you think and you engage with your monkey mind and in your mind, You're talking to yourself. You're talking to your negative ego, actually. And there's not much wisdom that can come from that. What you have to understand is that the mind is like a computer. It's only as good as the input, whatever you input into it. Yeah, the computer is just a bunch of programs and a bunch of stored information of what you have experienced so far. And it doesn't have an aspect of knowing the truth. All it is a computer of programs and stored information. And so whatever you input into the mind, or let's start the discussion by, oh, what do you think that means? This person said that to me. What do you think it means? So the computer will go search for anything that it perceives is remotely related to what's happening, anything that's your past experience, and will spit that back to you in whatever sequence the program runs. That's all it does. So when you're spending all that time trying to work out what's happening for you, or work out what that person meant, or work out what you're doing, all this by talking to yourself, by having the mental chatter, by thinking about it, all you're doing is just asking a computer that's an aspect of your negative ego to reveal the truth to you. Can you realize how nonsensical that is? The only way to get any sense of clarity about real reality, the true reality about what's really going on in any moment, it's through the eyes of the heart. And it's through really being present, really being identified in that deeper heart center where you can connect with the knowing and to really feel and sense what is going on. And yesterday we used all these examples of some things that could seem to be love but are not necessarily love, though sometimes they may be. If you ask the mind, you have a situation like this and you start talking to yourself, oh, what do you think? Does that person really love me, or did I really do that out of love? The mind's going to go, well, they came and had tea with you every day, and they've been listening to your stories and this, so A plus B equals C, therefore yes, it must be love. That's all the mind can do. Thinking about stuff isn't going to help. What you need to do is just go into that stillness of the mind, stillness of everything. Feel into the essence of what's really going on. That's the only way to get any sense of the truth, to get any sense of what's really going on. And like I said before, if you're triggered, if you're charged, if you have any expectations, preconceptions, you won't be able to get any clear perception of anything. And that's why our monitoring and our review processes are so important, because they're those moments where you stop and you can walk and do the dishes and stop inside yourself. You don't have to literally stop like this, but you stop in terms of your activity and the noise that can go on in your energy or whatever, and you just kind of really come back to that deep center, align if you're not already, but hopefully you would be already aligned and centered. But if you're not, you make sure that you are, and you just feel what's really going on here. Where was I coming from when I made that choice? Where does it actually feel that that person is coming from, right? Rather than me trying to work out what they mean when they said that, I've seen people get triggered when you ask them, how are you? And go, what do you mean? What do you mean, how am I? Is there something wrong with me? No, just how are you? But because this person at that moment was either triggered into something or was expecting to be judged or expecting to be attacked or something, when you say, how are you, they start to work with their little monkey mind. What does he mean? How am I? Are they saying something that they're not saying? And people do that all the time. We do that all the time. We expect certain things, we believe certain things, and then we use the mind to try to find proof of these things happening in our lives. And that's that whole thing of constantly seeking evidence of what we already believe and what we already are invested in. So, if you have that belief, that same example I used around love hurts and relationships are too dangerous because they're there to betrayal, you're going to constantly have that monkey mind scan everything and constantly search like that radar, boop, 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 search for signs of betrayal, signs of potential of being hurt, all of that. And when you do that, you're putting energy into that. It's like, ooh, I want to make sure there's no betrayal. Let me look everywhere for betrayal. Let me look everywhere for betrayal all the time. And every time you do that, you put energy into searching for betrayal, finding betrayal. And what do you end up getting when you put enough energy into it? Betrayal. Yay! So we need to really bring awareness to what it is that we believe, what it is that we expect, what it is that we give meaning to, and what kind of meanings we have placed on the things that happened in our lives, that happen in the world, and how we're constantly running, and it's usually unconscious patterns around constantly seeking to confirm and find evidence of that same thing that we believe. You know, for some people, changing is too scary, it's too threatening, and there's lots of different reasons for that. You know, embracing the unknown, feeling out of control. But for some people, it's simply because if you come to the age of 40 and you suddenly have to face the fact that you've lived your whole life with a faulty reality and a distorted reality, and you've made a mess of things yourself, it means you've been wrong all along. It means you've wasted 40 years of your life. That's what people make it mean. It actually doesn't mean that, but you know, a lot of people make that mean that. So it's kind of like, it's too late now. I can't just realize that I've wasted 40 years of my life. That's too hurtful. It's too depressing. It's just, you know, I can't face that. So I'm just going to keep denying reality, and I'm going to keep living in my little limited lens perception of the world and keep proving to myself that I'm right in that, because having to confront that I've really had a distorted vision of things for 40 years is just too depressing. Because it also means that there's probably a lot of opportunities you have missed along the way when you've been doing that. And you know, we know that doesn't feel good when you realize that there was an opportunity to be happier, more successful, and more fulfilled, and you didn't take it. It doesn't feel good, does it? And we have to remember these things. We'll do anything to avoid the experience of pain, unless we train them otherwise, and we'll release the judgment on the experience of pain. So don't be like that. Don't be someone who goes, oh, well, I'd rather fuck up my whole life than fuck up half of it. Yeah, that's great. And the thing is, you know what? If you came to that stage and went, wow, at 40, you start to realize that the way you've perceived things and the expectations and manifestations of the last 40 years is not the best you could have done, and there was a better way all along, it doesn't mean you've wasted 40 years. Because the fact that now you're here making a different choice means that these 40 years were part of the journey that took you to this point of being ready to confront more of the real reality. And you know, without those 40 years, maybe you would still want more of it. You would still be invested in it. Maybe those 40 years were really formative in getting you to the point where you've had enough, or you can really start to see the cracks show in that reality. So nothing is wasted, because everything takes you to where you are right now. Superstition. Usually when we talk about superstition, we talk about, you know, if the duck floats, then she's a witch. And all these things like this, you know, don't walk under a ladder, and oh my God, I just saw a black cat go across the street. Ah! And yeah, these are examples of really nonsensical, illogical superstition. But we are superstitious in our lives every day. Every time we place meanings on things from the monkey mind. Every time someone says something and we start to think about what they mean and translate that and turn it into a myth in our mind. Every time something happens and we attach meaning to that event. You know, and someone leaves me, it means I'm worthless. It means I've failed. It means I'm a bad person. Doesn't mean that. Doesn't mean that at all. Actually. A lot of the things people say and do has to do with them, not with you. a lot of the time. And yes, we all contribute to every experience that we have, but that doesn't mean you're worthless. It doesn't mean anything like that. It simply means that you are a human being on planet Earth having an experience where you're going through your evolution, so you have to learn lessons along the way. You're going from not knowing anything and not knowing how to live a life to evolving to develop capability and wisdom and knowledge about all sorts of things. So sometimes we're going to get things right away, and that's usually more good luck than good management. So, and a lot of the times we're going to make a mistake, correct, do it better next time. Make a mistake, correct, do it better next time. And none of it means anything about us not being deserving of love, and not being worthy, or not having a right to be unique, or not having, not belonging, any of that, because we know in here, that deep place within that we've talked about, we know we are worthy, we are self-determining, we're unique, and we do belong. So all these things that we feel around not being worthy, not belonging, not being self-determining, not being unique, all these things is because we have told ourselves this. We have built a reality where this is what we feel, this is what we believe, and this is what we've created. None of it is the truth. And if you don't feel worthy because you've chosen to make yourself feel not worthy and make things that happened along your journey mean that you were not worthy, then you're going to keep acting in a way that reflects that unworthiness, that keeps confirming to you that unworthiness. And you know, you were sharing just before how when you start to have a bit too much success, then you start to do things to sabotage that success because you don't want to be too successful, you have to keep yourself down. When did you decide that that was, you know, there's obviously a part of you in there that believes that you don't deserve to be very successful, or you should not be very successful. And when did you decide to assign that meaning to whatever happened to you? When did you decide to create a reality where this is what you do and this is what you deserve and you don't deserve anything more? So you need to really develop the skill of questioning everything you believe, everything you do, everything you choose, everything you act out of. You need to be able to really question all these things that you take for granted because you've always done it this way, or you've always felt like that, or you've always, you know, expected that of relationships, or expected that in your professional arena. And maybe for lifetimes, usually for lifetimes. And so you don't even realize that that's what you believe. You don't even realize that you sabotage yourself. You don't even realize that you punish yourself. Yet everyone in this room could be much brighter, much greater, much more in unity and Christ consciousness than you are right now. And the reason you're not is because you're choosing not to. And you have chosen not to for a long time. What is it that you believe? What reality have you created for yourselves that makes you be so much less than what you could be? What meaning have you been placing on things and continue to place on things that are self-destructive, self-limiting, sometimes hurtful of others? What is it that you're not seeing because you're too invested in seeing things the way you want to see them or the way you've always seen them? And remember, the mind doesn't have the answers. Only the heart knows. The mind only knows all the things that you invested in avoiding and denying and all the information that you've encountered in this life. That's all it knows. And it's usually all filtered through the lenses of that reality that you so want to protect. And I know, you know, we all here because we want to grow and we want to be master souls and we want to actualize more of our potential and bring more love and joy into our lives and serve and help the planet. And of course, the part of us that wants that is the true us, is the spirit self. But that gets muddled up and caught up with all the other aspects of us that have become unconscious because they're running on automatic drive, that are invested in actually limiting how much we can do that, limiting how much we can grow and actualize. And so, you know, As much as you're going, yeah, choose love and doing your practices and all this, if you're not just getting really great results ongoingly, or you find yourself going around in circles, or 3 steps forward, 1 step back, that's as much as you have investment in fear, investment on not really experiencing and perceiving the truth. The more you justify, the more you defend, the more you attack, the more you avoid, the more you deny, is how much more you have investment in staying in that egoic reality and just constantly validating that reality to yourself over and over again. If you spend 10 lifetimes shrinking, playing small, choosing fear, you're not going to become enlightened in a day. You're going to have to start putting more energy into choosing love. But for a lot of people, a lot of our students and a lot of people everywhere in the world, even when you work at it, there's a tendency, at least in periods, to go around in circles, to take 2 steps forward, 1 step back, or to make really slow progress. Well, that's why. Because you are unconsciously, usually it's unconsciously sabotaging your own efforts of choosing love, because there's still a lot of your energy that's invested in choosing fear, in validating that reality, in imagining what's happening instead of really experiencing what's actually happening, including imagining who you are instead of actually experiencing who you really are. And that's the first step. So questioning. With your review, for instance. Okay, this is what I did today, this is what I felt today, this is what I experienced today. This is how I perceive my day. Why? Is that really what happened? Don't ask the mind, ask the heart. Really feel into it. Oh, and this person said that, and I thought that meant that they were jealous, so, well, actually, and they was just making a, an offhand comment without meaning anything by it, or, oh, that person did that, maybe that means they're interested in dating me. Well, actually, they were just being kind. We see what we want to see. But you need to question that and really practice more and more feeling with the heart what's really going on. And sometimes it's going to be uncomfortable and inconvenient. And sometimes it's going to hurt because it's going to crash against those investments and attachments that you are defending so much. Oh, yeah, that person I'm in a relationship with, yeah, it's healthy, we have a good relationship, everything's great. Well, are you telling yourself that, or is it actually what you feel at the deepest level of your being? It's just a general example. I don't mean anything by it to anyone. But you need to just really seek the truth constantly. And that means constantly threatening your pre-existing reality. And that's the only way you're going to expand your reality as well. If you stay in that same reality you've had all along, it's not going to expand. You need to constantly take that down and think outside the box, so to speak. It's actually not a thinking thing. It's expanding outside the box. But for that you need to be aligned and centered and attuned to the highest, clearest love, and want the truth more than you want to protect your attachments, your expectations, validate your own beliefs about yourself, about the world. I know that there's, I've shared with some students sometimes that, and that's something I had myself, around feeling that the world is not a safe place. Because there has been some experiences, sometimes in other lives, and maybe in early childhood, of things that made us feel not safe. Maybe there was experiences of abandonment or bullying, or just other kids being nasty and having no one there to protect us. So, I don't know, something that just did not make us feel secure. And so we placed a meaning on that and went, well, that means the world is an unsafe, bad place. And then we live our lives feeling and believing and convincing ourselves that the world is not a safe place. And that's a bad place. So what are you going to do then? Well, you're going to fight the world. You're not going to open yourself to receive much from the world. You're going to see the world as an enemy and constantly push against it. You're not going to be able to really take life and turn it into love and collaborate with the universe, because you're at war with the world. And that's going to affect how you live your whole life. And it all started with you placing meaning on one or a few experiences and then continuing with that reality without ever questioning that. Without ever choosing to access something much deeper within yourself that knows that that's not the truth. Yeah, I mean, let's not be in denial either. The world is in a mess. There's a lot of fear, there's a lot of cruelty, there's a lot of things. But that doesn't mean that the world is a bad place. It doesn't mean that the world is unsafe for you. It's just people making choices, and there's certain consequences to those choices. And like everything in life, you experience what you manifest for yourself. So if you feel secure in yourself and you're aware of the dangers that are present in the world, it's not all love and light, and we know that, but you navigate your life from a place of feeling secure and feeling worthy and perceiving the love, being a love finder rather than being a fear finder, then you will experience more of that. Now, you know there's fear in the world. I know there's fear in the world, but the vast majority of the time, I see a lot more love than I see fear, because that's what I'm aligned to. I'm aware the fear is there, but I'm not like, caught up in being scared of it or focusing on it because I'm worried about it or anything like this. I focus on the love. I align to the love. I attune to the love. But I'm still aware of what's really going on as well out there in terms of people choosing fear a lot. And sometimes it gets to me because I love this planet and I don't want it to be destroyed by those idiots that keep choosing fear and evil and cruelty out there, but it's their choice. All I can do is just hold the presence of love and hope that more people will feel inspired to choose love day by day. Sometimes it gets to me, but a lot of the time I see more love than fear. And really, if you look deep enough, everything's about love. And yes, sometimes it's about love of power or love of being better than or love of winning. But everything that exists in creation is made of God stuff. Everything's about love in the end. And when you start to look more into the essence of things, it helps you also release the judgment on a lot of things. Because you can see, how can I explain that? You can see that there is nothing to judge, that in the end it is just people making choices, sometimes because they don't know any better, or sometimes because they don't realize the consequences of their actions, or sometimes because they're caught up in their own pain and their own anger and whatever's going on for them. There's always a cause to any consequence and always a consequence to any cause. And if Mother Earth hasn't shaken off the parasites that we are, humanity, then who are you to say that, they don't have a right to exist or that they're evil or there's something wrong with them? Yet it's not healthy. It's not healthy. Anyway, I digress here. So reality. Placing meaning on things, filtering reality through our patterns and investment in fear and preconceptions, expectations. So I'd like us to take a little break and start pondering, and this is a tea break, and start just pondering some of that for ourselves, and then we'll come back in and do a bit of a process and discussion around that. So we're just going to start to get into that process of what we need to do to come more from a place of feeling, sensing, experiencing the essence of what's going on in any given moment, rather than thinking about life. Experiencing, feeling life rather than thinking about life. So let's be really aligned and centered. What we're going to do as well is really also confront these lenses of perception, distortion of reality, those imaginings that we're placing on everything, the meanings we place on everything, out of our own reality, subjective, distorted reality that's caused by our fears and expectations and desire to avoid pain and conclusions that we've drawn from past experiences and meanings we've placed on that. So let's just really come from this deep center within, the center that can feel and know what's really going on within us and any other place. The part of us that wants the truth more than anything else, that seeks the truth above our investment in fear. If we want the truth more than we want the avoidance, the denial, the lies, the safety, the comfort zone, the avoidance of pain, then we have a chance. So we got to really put energy and focus into that part of us that wants the truth more than it wants the comfort, the safety, the known egoic reality. And we ask the God within to help us see how much in our day-to-day we filter things through the mind, through what we believe, deriving conclusion from things without actually really taking the time to know what's really going on or to feel what's really going on. Jumping to conclusions, expecting things from people, from events, from the world, from ourselves. When we start to look at all these reactions, all these interpretations, all these expectations, all these meanings that we tend to derive from things, from any communications, exchanges, discussions, what happens to us and what we make it mean, how we respond to that, how we feel about that, how we choose to feel about that, then it starts to really show us a whole portrait of how we view life and how we view ourselves. If we tend to interpret things a lot through the lens of, oh, it must be because they don't like me, or because I don't have anything to offer, or this happens because, see, once again, I'm good for nothing. And it all points the way to something in you that feels worthless, that has created a whole reality around the fact that you have nothing to offer, you're not good enough, you're worthless. If you tend to perceive a lot of things being attacking of you or against you, that you have to fight against things or against people a lot of the time, what does that show you about what you have built as a reality, what you believe? See with your heart, don't think about it. If you engage a thinker, you're just placing more meanings on the meanings that you're already placing on things. That's not what we're doing. We're feeling into the essence of what's really going on. We're shining the light of truth on our internal dynamics that cloud our judgments, that cause us to distort the input that we receive from life. We tend to perceive everything that happens through the lens of nobody likes me, nobody loves me, nobody wants to be with me, nobody wants me. What does that tell you about your reality? Our experience is a direct result of our subjective reality. Partly because that's just how we perceive whatever happens to us, whether it's love or fear, pleasant, unpleasant, we channel it all through the lenses of fear, so we experience fear. And part of it is we put so much energy into telling ourselves that we believe this, we believe this, we believe this, so then we put so much energy into it, we end up manifesting it. What is it that you struggle with in your life, that you keep manifesting, keep experiencing, keep seeing, keep thinking? Kind of discussions do you have with your little monkey mind, and what does that tell you? Well, it tells you need to stop listening to the monkey mind, first of all, of course. But what does that show you that you need to let go of? That's about ego. That's about being a fear finder instead of being a love finder. That's about keeping yourself small. We could all be so much greater than what we have allowed ourselves to be. But we have placed restrictions on ourselves. And a big part of it is filtering everything through our little reality and our beliefs about ourselves and about the world and about life. Shine the light on this, see that, feel how it feels. Feel how it really feels deep inside yourself. You may pretend that you feel good, that everything's fine, or that you may pretend that everything's horrible and everyone's against you. But deeper within, how do you really feel when you look at what you keep manifesting and what you keep making things mean? Allow yourself to feel how you really feel about yourself, your life, the world, the relationships in your life, the things you can achieve, the things you can and can't be. What do you keep manifesting? What do you keep seeing? Be honest. If you feel that really responsible for a lot of trouble that other people go through, whenever something goes wrong or someone has an issue around you, you feel responsible and you feel like you have to fix it. And you bring that back to yourself. What reality are you projecting onto life? Maybe you hold that reality that you're worthless, or you're guilty, or you've done something so horrible that you have to make up for it for the rest of eternity. Or you're not good enough, so you have to work extra hard to make up for that. This is not the truth. Anything that's about fear like that, it's going to be ego. You are not an ego. You are a great spiritual being that's just piled up a bunch of false meanings and false identities and distorted beliefs onto yourselves. It's time to undo that. Allow things to simply be what they are, without having to try to understand and work out what it means about you or what it means about anything. You can't work the meaning of life out with your monkey mind. The only thing you can do is surrender to feeling and becoming one with life itself. By being aligned to love, aligned to truth, and not thinking, being in the heart. And it starts by being able to see yourself as you really are. Part of it is actually acknowledging the great spiritual being that you are and all its light and splendor, but also acknowledging the mess you've surrounded and wrapped yourself in through past choices of fear. Just see it all as it is. You don't have to think about it. You don't have to have an opinion about it. Just see it as it is and let it be as it is. And then out of that you make your own choice. And the choice to let the fear go would probably be a useful one, but it's up to you. It's the one I recommend. So you got to see what's there to be able to let go. You got to feel it to be able to let it go. You can't just think about it. Thinking has no transformational value. Feeling in a full range of experience way, that's the way to transformation. Embracing the full experience of that and letting it go. This is the only way you're going to learn from it. This is the only way you're going to heal from it. This is the only way you're going to transform it. It can be very confronting to get out of that constant noise of the mind constant chatting to yourself about what things mean, what things don't mean, and to surrender to the heart that really can experience the truth. Part of the reason why we live through the mind and filter everything through the mind is because it allows us to avoid feeling. To avoid feeling all this fear that we've buried ourselves under. So once we start to move out of that mind control, chatter, lenses, expectation, blah, 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 that means this and this means that and this is, because this person must feel like this. Once we let go of that, we enter into the stillness of the heart, where we actually start to feel how it really is. And that can be confronting. But remember, you are never presented with anything you cannot handle. If you are seeing it, if you are feeling it, if it's coming up, it's because you are ready. Acknowledge it for what it is and let it go. Let go of the control of reality. Stop trying to control life by turning it into a reality that you're comfortable with or that you want to beat yourself up with. Believe me, truth is much better than any reality your little ego has created. Be in your heart, feel that presence that you are. And realize how all this other stuff that you've identified with, the noisy monkey mind, the lenses, that little reality you've been caught up on, just feel and realize how much less than what you really are it is. How much smaller than all that you are it is. How much it's holding you back, limiting you. And start letting go. And continue letting go. Monitor, notice what the mind is telling you. Notice what you're making things mean. And stop and go, what does that bring me to within myself? If I bring this back to myself, what does that show me that I have to let go of? Still the mind, come back to the heart. Feel. No one has ever died from feeling. It's just a feeling. It's okay. It's okay. Sometimes we like to see everything through the lens of it's all love and light, everything's going great. And yet, you manifesting failure and sabotaging your efforts and creating difficulties for yourself. So obviously, it's not all love and light. So see that reality you've created, which is about avoiding pain, avoiding things that you don't really want to confront within yourself. Bring it back to yourself. What is it that you're scared to acknowledge? What is it that you're scared to see and feel? What is it you're scared to feel and own? It's one thing to have a realization, but you need to work through all the parts of you that disagree with making the new choice. That's the integration. And then you need to actualize that new choice, that new knowing, that new realization by being different, manifesting things differently in your life, living differently. And whatever you tell yourself, whatever you think you know or have realized about spirit and love, if you're not walking the talk of it and seeing the effects of it in your life in some way, then it's all in your head. You haven't actualized the transformation. You haven't let go of the fear. You haven't embraced the love. Not really. And yes, we all have a certain amount of karma we have to work through. But we always have a choice about how we take that in, what we make it mean, and how we respond to that. And the answer is, don't make anything mean anything. Stop placing meaning on things. It's not about changing a bad meaning for a better meaning. That's still just the ego playing around with the mind. Don't place any meaning on things. Just let yourself feel and experience it as it really is. That's the key. It's not about reframing. It's about letting it just be as it is and working, living through the heart, through feeling. Doesn't need to mean anything. And keep that process, keep the clearing, keep the letting go. Make that part of your daily monitoring and daily practice of awareness, daily review, and keep going with it until you've let go of all the untruths and all the limiting realities, more and more and more and more. Expanding your consciousness, expanding your awareness into more truth, because you are letting go of your little egoic realities, lenses, beliefs and perceptions. Seeing and experiencing life more and more through the eyes of the heart, through the experience of spirit. And spirit doesn't think. Spirit simply is. Spirit simply is. Living life as spirit.